Yes.
Welcome to Radical Books and Politics. So it's my honor and pleasure to have David Green, author of A Story in D is for Demon and another series that he's going to talk about. He hails from Ireland and is full-blooded Irish. We were having this conversation earlier, so it's a pleasure. Welcome. Why don't you tell us about yourself, David?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on again.
Again.
I'll say something a bit different. So yeah, obviously I don't. Some people listen to this will notice my accent is quite Mancunian. So I grew up in Manchester and Ireland, but I was in Manchester until I was 26. I've been over here for 11 years, so that's my age as well if you add those together. I have a 2.5-year-old. I'm a full-time dad. I look after him. I've been doing that since he was 6 months, which is great. I love doing it. It's quite a change because I used to be upper management in retail for a long time. So too long actually.
Yeah.
And so it was a nice change of pace, but it's it's especially with lockdown and everything. It was it's been 6 months of just me and the toddler.
The important job. My husband was in the same boat. Since 2014, he's been a stay-at-home dad, and it's it is what it is. But he's a fantastic father. And my little girl, her vocabulary is through the roof, So I'm telling you that you have the important job with that little, and it makes you a better human being. It really does, I think. And lockdown's a challenge. I have two. I have a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old, and they're very precocious, and they're starting to band and unite in ways that I don't like, but it is what it is,
Yeah.
So
No, it's been great. Like it's been, I could never, probably 10 years ago when I moved, or 11 years ago when I moved here, I don't think I would ever have imagined myself, I don't even think I would have seen myself with kids or a kid, let alone being a stay-at-home dad.
And are you finding time to write? Do you?
Yeah. I write nighttime, so when he goes to bed at around 8ish. Depends what we've done during the day. Sometimes it's a little bit, but he's not had naps during the day since Christmas last year.
Yeah.
It's long days. So sometimes he's tuckered out, so he goes to bed pretty early.
That's wonderful.
And then it's writing. Then I write every day of the week except for Fridays. Saturdays, my wife is here on a Saturday because she's working. So she has him on the Saturday, so I get to write all day. Then we have Saturday evenings off where we can catch up on a movie or TV or something.
And we were talking about, so we were on BeLive earlier and this software crapped out, which I'm going to have a huge discussion with this company. It's the second time this happens during a major interview. Oh my gosh, I won't even tell you about my David Romero interview. That was a nightmare. But
it's the Davids.
Truth, right?
Yeah, we're a curse.
And thank you for being gracious, David. And technology is wonderful, but it can be such a cluster F, So you don't just write in horror. I do want you to tell my viewers about the story you wrote, but you write in multiple genres.
Yeah, mainly because I'm quite new to this and I'm not really sure what I'm doing. I think that's one of the things, and also as well, it's just I do have a lot of interest, like in terms of my reading. Like I started off as fantasy as my, and that would still be my go-to kind of genre to read. But also when I was very, very young, I was massively into Arthurian legends.
Of course.
Robin Hood, growing up in England, and then obviously from my Irish side as well, into kind of like the Fae and all that kind of stuff. Because
do you believe in fairies?
I'd like to. I'm like this with a lot of things. I'd like to believe in these things. I think people that have faith in something I really kind of envy them in a lot of ways. I think it's a great thing to have faith in something, and be that fairies or magic and mystical energies or anything. Like I think it's a wonderful thing to believe, and I think it gets people through a lot of hard times. So I'd like to. I think Ireland is great for that. I mean, I took my son to the woods today, and there's and all the trees, you have little fairy doors on them. with the names of the fairies on them, and he's potting around, looking at them and knocking them on the doors and asking them to come out to play and everything. And it's great to see, like, you know.
Nice, nice.
So
Yeah.
that's great.
Cool.
So like I was into all that kind of stuff, but I really got into gothic horror when I started high school. So you know the classics like Shelley and all that, but also Poe and Lovecraft,
Of course.
which kind of sparked my interest in American literature because well, pretty much when I was growing up, it was pretty much all kind of European and mainly British authors that I would read because that's kind of what's on the syllabus in school and everything.
Us too. Same thing for us, David.
Yeah.
A lot of literature, you know.
Yeah. So Lovecraft and Poe were probably the first American ones that I got into, and that kind of opened a lot of doors to other authors like Stephen King and what have you, but also just America as a whole. Obviously, with movies, we're saturated with American films, so you grow up with them and you know about them.
And I'm
But
sorry.
then when you no, I love them. Like I love film. Like I could talk all day about films, but like I think with the literature, you kind of, especially that the Lovecraftian kind of New England vibe, which is like fascinated me like since
Sure.
because it's just a, so I kind of got interested in American history and stuff through that to kind of see like where it all came from and everything. So a lot of the things that I write are set in America.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah,
Huh.
yeah.
Have you been to the States quite a bit?
Not really, no. I've been twice. I've been to stopped in Philadelphia for about 20 minutes on my way to Florida, and then I've been to Vegas as well. So I've just been to like.
Do you research? How do you get a sense of setting if the stories take place in America?
Yeah. So like research. Yeah, research. It depends. It depends what kind of story it is and what genre it is as well. So like if it's a short story and it's kind of like a horror, if it's like a contemporary kind of horror one, I don't tend to research them too much because you just see it all the time, especially when you're outside America. You see it like you see it in the films and you see it on TV shows and what have you. So you're kind of familiar with it. But for the novel that I've got coming out next year, which is called The Santa Monica Man, which is set in Santa Monica, and it's also set in the 40s. Like I researched that heavily. I was going through library books, online research, online encyclopedias, going through kind of like making sure that I was kind of getting the dialect correct and kind of sayings that people would say. And obviously because it was set in a real place, I did invent some of my own kind of club, like there's a club in it, which is quite an important club, which I made up the name of it. But there's also a cinema called the Criterion, which is actually there, and it was open just before like the story is set, so I was able to kind of reference all that kind of thing as well.
Great, that's beautiful.
And you can fall down some rabbit holes sometimes. I remember I was writing a scene about, because the guy is a World War II vet, and obviously in those kind of days, a lot of these young men came out of World War II and were, had been living violence for a long time, and it was kind of like, what do we do? A lot of them got into the police force, and a lot of them got into other kind of areas and everything, and a lot of them self-medicated to kind of deal with what they'd seen. So this is where we find the situation for this guy, and he's kind of in a bit of a mess, and he's got a very important meeting, so he wants to look his best for it. So I have a scene where he's getting himself ready to go for this meeting. And I was kind of like, I wrote about a shower, and then I said, would they have showers in Santa Monica in 1949? So I started trying to find this out, and I think I spent nearly 2 hours looking into it. And
yeah, of course, that's brilliant. No, I think so. I really do think, I know that there's the internet and Wikipedia, but in general, really good stories, even really great poetry, comes from well-researched ideas, and I really do think it's fundamental. Masadia, who I interviewed a few interviews back, was talking about the depth of research that he does for just one poem. It fascinated me. But when I read his poetry, you see it. I mean, it's not like he's infusing academic language in there, but it makes a difference. I would want to know that too. In fact, I would assume there weren't showers back then in Santa Monica, right?
No, there wasn't really. They were just put into the new apartments in kind of 48, 49, but they were like the brand new apartments. And my character is in kind of ones that were built in the 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well,
That's
that's
wonderful.
that's
It sounds like a story. It sounds amazing. It does. I can't wait to buy it. So earlier we had talked about how you had done different chapters towards this novel as short stories. Do you want to talk a little bit about that process? Because I find that fascinating.
Yeah. So I was kind of I didn't know what I was doing really. So like, what I started a creative writing class as just something to. I'd always wanted to do writing. I have an art degree, which had got like a long time ago that I shouldn't do anything with, but it was film is what I kind of majored in.
I see.
So like film studies, and that was kind of what I wanted to get into. But at the time, this was the early 2000s in England, and there was only one film school in the whole of England, which was in London.
Oh,
And I'm from up north, and it's only a small country, but if you're the north of the country is like a completely different place to the south of the country. It's different accents, obviously, but different way of looking at things, and it's the prices of things are completely different as well. So like going from Manchester to London for a film school, which is not something that would be covered by student loans or anything, just proved I worked out that I needed to have 4 full-time jobs to kind of pay for my yeah. So I was like, well, I don't think I can do that. That's moving that out.
wow.
Yeah, it was like the cost of living in London is astronomical now, let alone then. And the kind of because it was not seen as an academic subject, you weren't covered by student loans, you can get a grant. So it's basically the cost of each semester and rent and all this kind of stuff. It was just it's too much. So I kind of just fell into what I was doing then for a long time. And I kind of always wanted to do some kind of writing, but it was one of those things where I was like, well, I'll do it in the future.
Right.
You know, and I think a lot of it was.
That was the same thing with the novel. I told you I've been working on a novel for over 20 years, and I finally finished it. I finished it. I started working on it, and then I got pregnant again. Then I was like, forget it. So when my daughter turned 2, that's when I started hammering at it. And now I'm just going through the revision phase. It's been rewritten like 4 times, but it's difficult. But I say the itch never goes away.
Yeah.
It never goes away. It's always there. You just have to spark it back up like riding a bike, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, I had a little notebook. I actually found it recently. God, the notebook's about 20 years old, where I had like little ideas. And it's funny, some of them I completely forgotten about. Well, I thought I had, but some of the work that I've had published since have similar ideas to these things that I had 20 years ago that I just jotted down in this little book. So it's funny, they stick inside your head.
Oh, sure. Stephen King is not a proponent of the notebook. I am. I need it because I forget things. But one of the things he says is that if the ideas are really good, they'll still stay there. I think it's true, you know?
Yeah.
So, David, I'm curious. How long have you been writing?
So kind of always wanted to, and kind of like excuses not to do it. I think a bit of anxiety as well, like kind of stopped me from kind of doing it as well, like, you know. But then when I kind of became a full-time dad, I was, you know, just something to do outside of the house. So a friend of mine who had told that like I'd wanted to do writing for a while, she had done a creative writing course and she recommended it to go to this one, so I did. And it was so I just started there. So like the novel, The Santa Monica Man, started there as a short story. So we had a writing prompt, and the writing prompt was a line from a book that was his face was gripped in a hideous smile, and that was the writing prompt. And it was just like write a short story or a poem or whatever about this. So I wrote the first, which is now the first chapter of the book.
Nice.
From that. So that was 2 years ago.
Wonderful.
2 years ago this month, actually.
That's amazing.
So I was doing that, and I kind of then wrote a few other little things just to kind of practice, really. But then I think in the following January, so January 2019, someone who was in the class, I bumped into him in the street, and he said, "Did you do anything about the one about the Santa Monica Pier that you wrote?"
Right.
And I
Oh,
said,
you remembered it. That's great.
"Yeah, you remembered it?" And I was kind of like, I said, "No," I said, "I've got an idea, like, of it." So basically, did you ever hear of the Somerton Man, the guy in Australia?
Mm.
But they find the guy on the beach and just they never knew who he was, and he was like really unusually dressed and all this kind of thing. So it's kind of based on that kind of premise where they find this body in a very unusual place, dressed completely differently with no kind of papers on them or anything like that. And I had this idea of I wonder if I could solve this case.
Right.
Right. So I kind of looked at it and I was like, right, I'll make my own case around it. So that was the idea. So I started it properly in kind of January 2019, and then I wrote it a chapter at a time, but treated it as like short stories. So each chapter I'd set out at the start of the chapter, I'd write across the top, this is what has to happen in this chapter. This is the beginning, middle, and end of this chapter.
So you don't plot everything out though, right?
No, I don't. With this one, I had a firm beginning because it was written. I knew the end bit, and I knew who the Santa Monica Man was and
That's
his
amazing.
relationship. So
You know, I teach creative writing too for a living, and I love it. I don't think I could do anything else besides, uh, I just love it. And one of the things that I tell my students, everybody, there's no magic bullet. Everybody has a different process, but I'm not a plotter. I'm just not. But I do believe that in order to have a strong novel, a strong short story, you have to have strong characters and really get to know those characters. And I tell my students, think of the metaphor of dating. You want to get to know everything about that person, their habits, their quirks, how they are when they're an asshole, all these things. Round it out, and usually it works. There are some students that it doesn't work for, but I'm the same way. I'll have like a real clear sense of beginning, and a lot of times I'll know what the ending is going to be, and the major conflict and desire is what's really important, the antagonist, and then go from there. And I give my characters free reign, and usually it works out, you know.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
and we also have a story coming out in Unity, which I just wanted to shamelessly pitch.
yeah.
Being published by Body Blues Press, which is my own press. It is a charity anthology, and the story appearing from you is called Something Missing. But this is the proceeds are going to Doctors Without Borders, and I got to tell you that the editorial board loved your story.
Thank you.
There is no question about it. So I don't know if you want to speak about that, but the calls are closed, unfortunately, and I'm really enjoying editing the work.
Yeah.
Have
Um,
labor issues and raising kids and all this in between, but truly, the thing I remember about Something Missing is that it was unique. Just like you were describing your demon, D's for Demon story, it had an interesting twist to it, and I don't know, I love that about your work that I've seen so far. I don't know if you want to speak to it.
yeah, sure. Thanks for accepting the story. It was uh, a mutual friend kind of alerted me to it. And I'd never, again, I'd read magical realism, but I'd never written in magical realism. And I wanted to try it because, I do love the genre. So with this one, yeah, I kind of I like to write about females quite a lot as main characters. I do male ones as well, but I do like to kind of put myself into a completely different mindset
Right.
if I can. But I also then like to kind of write about stuff that I kind of experienced myself. And so Something Missing is basically a story about a little girl who has grown up all life feeling different to everyone else that's around her, which a lot of people do.
Yeah, of course.
And with her, she questions if she is the problem. Like, is everyone else normal and she is the one that's the problem? Like, and I've kind of lived with depression for a long, long time since I was a child. Actually, since 11 or 12, like I was kind of getting treated for it. And when I was a teenager, I had that kind of feeling like, there's something wrong with me. I'm different to everyone else, and
Right.
there's something inside me is missing, basically.
Right.
So that's what the story of this one is that this little girl, she becomes drawn to these woods that she goes to explore, and each time she goes a little deeper, and then she finds the thing that she's been looking for.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the thing that she's looking for, and no spoilers obviously, but the thing that she's looking for is herself.
Right, right. No, and I
Yep.
thought that was beautiful. The metaphor was beautiful, and I can relate, brother, because I suffer from depression too. But you could tell the main character was really struggling, and I thought the point of view was so interesting, and it leaves a lot of interpretation for the reader as well, right? And that's what makes it so wonderful. I think it's going to be great to have it in Unity. It's going to be one of the the more intriguing pieces in there because it doesn't have magical creatures per se, but it is a magical realism story. You know what I'm saying? It was really well done. Keep writing in that genre. I think especially
Uh,
if you have this background of fairies and this rich Irish heritage that could easily weave itself into magical realism. You know?
yeah, 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 yeah. This it is. Yeah, there's a lot of. We're kind of blessed being living in Ireland and in England as well. 'Cause I didn't live too far away from Wales, which is a beautiful country, and it's got its own amazing history and tapestry and belief system as well. Um, similar to Ireland, and obviously a lot of the kind of Britons were forced into Wales and across to Ireland, the original people in England. And so it's kind of like there's a lot of shared kind of things. And the other thing that I have coming out in October, which is a novelette, which is an urban fantasy, has quite a lot of that kind of thing in it as well. Even though again it's set in America, but it does have like fae and it has levels of realism in it. So it's like you see that kind of the world as it is, but there's a different layer to it,
Right, right,
which I find that really fascinating as a reader.
right.
So and obviously I think it's about that kind of thing, like something missing is like kind of a lot of my work is that I do something missing is kind of like it speaks for it quite a lot because a lot of the themes that are in that short story are what I put into my other pieces of work,
Right.
where someone's searching for something and
It's great. It sounds like
yeah.
that might be part of your niche, you know?
Mhm.
But I mean, yeah, I think that's amazing. And I think it's wonderful that you're able to write a novel in 2 years. That's great. I don't think a lot of people can do that, David, you know? That's fantastic.
Um, I think it helped that I didn't know what I was doing. I think if I really sat down and thought about it, I would have probably not have done it.
Right.
But it was kind of just like it was just a release really because I'm a big video gamer and I don't have the time to do it as much with my son around because he was so young. So
Sure.
it's kind of like I need to do something else. And then I got when I started the creative writing lessons, it was something that I could do that I enjoyed. Which was that escape as
Sure.
well to kind of go into a different world. And even though it was in my own head, it's still a different world, and it's something that I could do relatively quietly and um, in a small space, which helps.
Yeah, yeah. No, I feel you, brother. I think that's amazing. So, I know I've heard about a few projects coming up, but is there anything else our viewers should be aware of that they should be looking out for?
Yeah, so I think obviously there's Unity and there's a few other kind of anthologies coming out, but the kind of the first one is kind of the novelette is going to be my debut single author um, release, which I only started kind of submitting work in March of this year, and I set myself the aim of one anthology.
Right,
So
right.
it's kind of like to have a single author one before the end of the year
Yeah.
is like unbelievable, really. So
And
this one is.
is that novelette being published by the same publishing house as putting out your novel, or is it different?
No, it's a different one. So this one is from Black Hair Press,
Oh,
who
right, right,
are
right. Because of the big,
Australian.
I know those
Yeah,
guys. Yeah, they're fantastic, fantastic.
yeah, yeah,
Really.
they're great. Yeah, they're really good. Like I love them.
So I find that wonderful. You've been sending out your work since March and getting acceptances, and you have your debut novel coming out in October, right? Or is that the novelette?
Yeah, so novelette is. I think it's October for the novelette. I think it's looking that way, and then the novel is going to be March next year.
Oh my gosh, David. Well, my hat's off to you, man. I hope everything works out beautifully for you, and you're also excited to be working with this family-owned press. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so this is Red Cape Publishing, who D is for Demons is with. So they're a husband and wife. They're based in Brighton, in the UK. They've been doing a few. They had an Elements series last year. This year they started the A to Z of horror. So they're up to D, which is Demons, which came out
Nice.
on Wednesday, just gone. And they're a great publisher. They're very approachable. They're really good quality as well. Everything they've released so far has been great, and they've also released some single author stuff as well. Like they had a Vegas Rift, which just came out from them, which I reviewed actually on my website, which is brilliant. It's a really, really good book. It's really inventive. Like a genre splice of things as well. It was great. So yeah, they're called Red Cape. They've got calls open at the moment for G is for Gina. And they have H as well, which I can't think of what it is off the top of my head. But they're basically doing one for every single one. It's going to last for a couple of years, basically, the series. So it's great, yeah. Yeah, they're very good.
I'm totally about supporting small presses. Well, I support large presses too because it seems like so many presses are going out of business, but totally support independent, especially when they do good work and they treat their authors well.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. So where can my viewers find you on your socials?
So I'm on Facebook. I have an off page there, which is just David Green Writer. So it's my name, Writer. That's that. And I'm on Twitter, which is at David P Green 83.
Excellent. Well, thank you, David. This has been amazing. I had such a good time getting to know you better. And please come back on the show again. Hopefully, we won't have any more technological glitches. You know.
You never know.
Buy and read your books. I mean, I got my TBR stack. It's huge. But such a pleasure. Thank you so much, David.
Thanks for having me on. It's been great.
I love Ireland. I thought I was going to marry an Irishman. I got close. I married he was adopted. That's okay. But I just find the culture just fascinating, and I'm so glad you could come on the show. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Okay, have a blessed day, brother.
Hey, book lovers. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.